Hi, today I will be recapping a movie titled Universal Soldier. The film opens during the Vietnam War, where an American military unit is tasked with protecting a village from North Vietnamese forces. Deveraux arrives to a horrifying scene, discovering that his squad members and several villagers have been killed, and their ears have been gruesomely removed. The perpetrator behind this brutal act is his fellow soldier, Sergeant Andrew Scott, who has descended into madness and violence. Deveraux discovers that Scott is holding a young boy and girl captive. Deveraux attempts to talk to Scott, emphasizing that the war has ended. Scott, however, grows enraged and tragically shoots the boy in front of Deveraux. He then commands Deveraux to shoot the girl, demanding a gruesome display of loyalty. Deveraux declines and prevents Scott from shooting the girl. As the girl tries to flee, Scott tosses a grenade at her, resulting in her death. Luke and Scott exchange gunfire, ultimately leading to both of their deaths. The following day, the commanding officer instructs the team to handle the bodies discreetly and avoid discussing the true events with anyone. Fast forward to 1992, and terrorists have seized control of the Hoover Dam. The dam's roadway is littered with the bodies of civilians, and nearby police officers lie dead. Some surviving civilians have been held hostage. Law enforcement agencies receive strict orders not to intervene. Instead, the Universal Soldiers, an elite counterterrorism unit, are deployed for the mission, with Deveraux now designated as GR-44 and Scott as GR-13. Remarkably, they have been revived with no recollection of their past lives. As news journalists assemble outside to cover the breaking story, our main character, Veronica, arrives late once more and faces the consequence of losing her job. The Universal Soldiers are deployed from a helicopter. Deveraux eliminates one guard while Scott deals with another. They employ a radio frequency to convince the remaining terrorists that everything is under control. Descending down the dam, they eliminate a terrorist guarding the exterior. Simultaneously, inside the dam, one of the Universal Soldiers approaches the terrorists. They shoot him, but thanks to their self-healing abilities, he rises and shoots the terrorist leader, neutralizing him. Upon securing the area, Deveraux starts to recollect memories from his previous life, when he notices two of the hostages who bear a striking resemblance to the villagers he once tried to save in Vietnam. When he turns around, he locks eyes with Scott, leading him to disregard radio commands from the control team. TV news journalist Veronica Roberts is on a mission to uncover the truth about the Unisol project, hoping it will help her regain her job. In a command center, scientists are investigating the incident at the Hoover Dam. They've learned that the Unisols have the abilities to overheat and stop working. To control them, they're given a serum that erases their memories. They then ask Deveraux what happened, and he describes the event that happened in Vietnam. After a recent problem, Woodward, a scientist, suggests taking Scott and Deveraux out of action for more tests, but Colonel Perry insists on continuing the mission. Veronica secretly enters the base with her camera to dig deeper into the project. She comes across a severely injured Unisol and takes a photo, only to realize he's still alive, which startles her. Panicking, she leaves, but her presence is detected by a security camera. In response, the general sends Deveraux and Scott after her, resulting in a car chase that ends in her crashing. Then General gives orders to secure the camera and return to base. Scott ruthlessly kills the cameraman, but Deveraux steps in, stopping him from shooting Roberts. They manage to flee in a Unisol vehicle. Scott shoots at them, but the car continues its course until Perry commands Deveraux to halt. But Veronica removes the headset, restoring his clarity. They successfully flee in the car. Scott accuses Deveraux of betrayal, evoking their shared history from Vietnam. Back at the lab, scientists advise Colonel Perry to terminate the project, but he rejects this suggestion. Instead, he decides to pursue the reporter and Deveraux across the country, aiming to prevent information about the Unisols from leaking, not just to the public, but also to the American government, who remain unaware of the project's true nature. As they drive away, Veronica asks Deveraux why he helped her. He explains that he just wants to go home after his military service. Veronica notices his bullet wound, and he improvises a sterilization using the car lighter. When the car runs out of gas, Deveraux pushes it to a gas station, but they find it's out of fuel and the phone there doesn't work, so they decide to rent a motel room for the night. Roberts switches on the TV and discovers that she's being falsely accused of her cameraman's murder. Deveraux begins to experience overheating, prompting him to undress and position himself in front of the air conditioner. When Veronica decides to leave the room, Deveraux follows but suddenly collapses due to his ailment. He tells Veronica he needs ice, so she assists him by filling the tub with ice, which aids in his recovery. She attempts to use a telephone but senses something is amiss. She hurries back to the room, where Scott is outside, keeping a watch. Deveraux swiftly dons his clothing just as Scott and the other soldiers open fire on their room. Deveraux seizes Veronica, and they seek shelter, with Deveraux forcefully breaking through a wall into the adjacent room. Deveraux remains composed amidst the gunfire while Veronica panics and screams. Scott and the other Unisouls enter the apartment, searching for them but unable to locate them, unaware that Deveraux had taken the car keys from the occupants, and they are now making their getaway. The following day, while driving, Veronica starts asking Deveraux questions. He admits to having no memory of the past events. They continue their journey and stop at another gas station. Veronica begins to suspect they might be tracked, so Deveraux takes her into the shop, where he undresses. He asks Veronica to check his body for a possible tracking device inside him. Eventually, Veronica finds the tracker on Deveraux's leg. He uses a knife to create an incision in his leg, giving Veronica enough space to retrieve the tracker with her fingers. Moments later, the special unit storms the gas station, forcibly entering and firing their weapons. However, Deveraux had set up a cunning trap. He had placed the tracker amidst spilled oil, and the soldiers' gunfire ignites a powerful explosion. As the technicians rush out to combat the flames harming their Unisouls, capitalizing on the chaos, the duo infiltrates the unit's truck, securing a cache of files before retreating to their car and successfully escaping. Unaware of Scott hiding in the back seat, he suddenly attacks Deveraux, causing him to lose control and collide with a rock. The impact sends Scott flying through the windshield, allowing Deveraux and Veronica to resume their escape. Perry makes the decision to conclude the mission, ordering everyone to return to the truck and depart. However, Scott shocks everyone by shooting Perry. He then enters the truck where the technicians are attending to the wounded soldiers. A soldier tries to intervene. Scott swiftly eliminates him. Left with no other choice, the remaining personnel are compelled to follow Scott's directives. While the technicians continue their work on repairing the other soldiers, Scott begins injecting himself with muscle enhancers to further increase his strength. Meanwhile, Deveraux and Veronica make a pit stop at a diner to grab a meal and delve into the files they acquired. Uncertain about what to order, Deveraux watches other diners and mimics their choices, discovering a newfound enjoyment in the process. He becomes so enamored with the food that he requests more dishes. The waitress brings a plethora of plates, but when she inquires about payment, Deveraux is at a loss for words. The owner of the diner intervenes and attempts to strike Deveraux, but he effortlessly dodges the attack and defeats the owner with a single kick. Other patrons in the diner also attempt to confront Deveraux, but he easily overpowers them, even sending one crashing through a window. An incident witnessed by Veronica. She approaches Deveraux, only to find him relaxed with a bowl of popcorn. Later that evening, Scott arrives at the bar and demands information about Deveraux and Veronica. When a local man mocks him, Scott retaliates by assaulting him. Meanwhile, inside the truck, the last technician coerces a soldier into activating a grenade, resulting in the vehicle's explosion. However, Scott doesn't relent and rescues two fellow soldiers. He then leads them into a supermarket, attempting to store them in the freezer, but unfortunately, they do not survive. At that moment, a group of guards arrives, but Scott swiftly eliminates them all. In the morning, Deveraux and Veronica follow a lead from the files and arrive at a veterans hospital in Utah. Here, they meet Dr. Gregor, the mastermind behind the program. The sight of Gregor's face triggers Deveraux's memories. He recalls being in the operating room, while Gregor transformed him into a super soldier. Gregor informs Veronica about his scientific research. As they watch the news, they learn of Perry's death, and once again, Veronica is being accused. The security footage from the supermarket is also shown, and Gregor clarifies that Scott still believes he's in Vietnam fighting insurgents. Veronica proposes revealing the story, but Deveraux, feeling exhausted, he gives her a bus ticket to Los Angeles. Veronica takes the ticket, pretends to board the bus, but eventually chooses not to get on. Surrounded by cops, they get arrested and taken away in a police convoy. Scott chases them in the truck, causing chaos by ramming a police car and then repeatedly hitting the bus while shooting. Deveraux protects Veronica as the soldiers kill the bus driver, making the bus lose control and go off the road. Deveraux breaks a seat to get a piece of metal, trying to pick the lock. Meanwhile, Scott keeps ramming the bus with the truck. Suddenly, Scott throws a grenade inside the bus, but Veronica quickly grabs it and throws it out, making it explode outside. Deveraux regains control of the bus from the driver's seat and seizes a cop's gun. He instructs Veronica to exit the bus just before Scott's continuous collisions tip it over. Scott then forcefully pushes the bus toward the edge of a cliff. Deveraux manages to flee through a window, eliminating Scott's final partner before leaping to safety. Both vehicles plunge off the cliff and erupt in flames upon hitting the ground. As another cop from the convoy arrives to apprehend them, Veronica incapacitates him, and they make their getaway using his car. Deveraux returns to his family home, where he is joyfully reunited with his family. However, they are unaware that Scott has tracked them down and has now taken Veronica hostage. Scott shouts out for Deveraux to come and face him, or he will kill Veronica. Deveraux makes his way outside to face him. The two engage in a brutal confrontation, during which Scott gains the upper hand due to the strength-enhancing drugs he has consumed. As Veronica manages to break free from her restraints and attempts to escape, Scott hurls a grenade at her, rendering her unconscious. Deveraux, believing that she has been killed, becomes consumed with anger, driving him to fight even harder and gaining the upper hand against Scott. Scott drops an enhancer injection, prompting Deveraux to swiftly seize it and administer it to himself. Now evenly matched in strength, Deveraux manages to kick Scott through a wall and onto some spikes. Despite Scott's self-healing abilities, Deveraux takes no chances and incapacitates him by breaking his wrist and forcing him into a grinder. With Scott now dead, he goes to check on Veronica, realizing she is still alive. Overwhelmed with emotion, Deveraux and Veronica hug.